Everything scientists thought they knew about raptors was wrong. They were supposed to be small, they were supposed to be late arrivals. Then, one animal showed up and destroyed both assumptions at once. Today, I'm breaking down every dangerous dinosaur you need to know about, starting with the one that carried a switchblade on each foot. Utahraptor. Before Utahraptor was properly studied, paleontologists had a very clean, very wrong picture of raptors. Every sickle-clawed dromaeosaur they'd found was small and confined to the late Cretaceous. That was the rule. Utahraptor shattered it. This thing measured 6 to 7 meters long and weighed around 500 kilograms. That's not a raptor. That's closer to a large theropod. And it lived during the early Cretaceous, roughly 125 million years ago, millions of years before raptors were supposed to get interesting. But the size isn't even the scary part. The scary part is the weapon. Each foot carried a retractable sickle claw measuring up to 24 centimeters long, a switchblade. Utahraptor kept it sheathed while running to prevent wear, then deployed it on contact. Unlike Velociraptor, which was built light and needed its hands for balance, Utahraptor was stocky enough to deliver devastating kicks without tipping over. Every part of this animal was built to kill things bigger than it had any right to challenge. But here's where it gets really dark. In 2001, a 9-ton block of Utah sandstone was found containing at least 7 Utahraptor individuals of different ages. The leading theory is they became mired trying to feed on prey already caught in quicksand, a predator trap. Apex predators killed by the same trap they were trying to exploit, and the age range is what makes this genuinely unsettling. Multiple age groups in one bone bed strongly implies social organization. Younger individuals learning within a group. Utahraptor wasn't just big and armed, it was smart enough to hunt together, but as dangerous as a pack of switchblade-footed raptors sounds, at least they topped out at 500 kilograms. The next predator on this list weighed several tons and dominated its ecosystem for millions of years. Allosaurus. Allosaurus didn't just live in the late Jurassic, it owned it. For millions of years, this was the apex predator across western North America, and with over 60 individual specimens recovered, paleontologists know this animal almost as well as some living species. That's not an exaggeration. This is one of the most well-documented theropods in the entire fossil record, and what that record tells us is terrifying. The average Allosaurus stretched about 8.5 meters long, but some individuals exceeded 11.8 meters and weighed between 2 and 3 tons. Its skull carried roughly 30 to 40 blade-like teeth, but here's the thing. Those teeth were surprisingly small relative to the skull. That wasn't a design flaw. Allosaurus wasn't built to crush, it was built to cut. Robert Baker compared its upper jaw to a serrated saw. The entire cutting edge would be driven into prey to open massive gaping wounds, not to kill instantly, but to bleed the target out gradually. Think about how Komodo dragons hunt today. They bite, they back off, and they wait for their prey to weaken from blood loss and infection. Allosaurus was doing the same thing 150 million years earlier. Its binocular vision only covered about 20 degrees, slightly narrower than a modern crocodile's, and its top speed sat somewhere between 30 and 55 kilometers per hour. Both of those numbers point to one conclusion: ambush predator. This wasn't a chaser, it stalked, it struck, and it let the wounds do the rest. But here's where it gets dark. A specimen nicknamed Big Al, found in Wyoming, tells us exactly what life was actually like for these animals. Big Al had broken ribs, damaged vertebrae, and infected bones all over its body. A lifetime of accumulated injuries from hunting things that fought back. And it died at roughly age 7, not from a battle, not from a rival predator, from an infected toe. One toe wound made hunting impossible, and without the ability to hunt, Big Al starved. That's the brutal math of being a Jurassic predator. You don't get to retire, you don't get to heal. The moment your body fails you, it's over. But if Allosaurus sounds like a nightmare, wait until you meet the dinosaur that traded arm strength for pure, terrifying speed. Carnotaurus. Carnotaurus is the weirdest predator on this list, and I mean that as a compliment. Its name literally translates to meat-eating bull, and it earned every syllable of that title. This is the only large carnivorous dinosaur ever discovered with genuine horns. Two thick cone-shaped protrusions sitting right above the eyes formed from solid frontal bone, and those are just the cores. In life, they would have been capped with keratinous sheaths that extended well beyond what the fossil preserves. Picture something closer to an actual bull than anything you'd expect on a theropod. But here's the thing. Carnotaurus wasn't built like a bull at all. At 8 to 9 meters long and roughly 1.5 to 2 tons, it was significantly lighter than almost every other predator of equivalent length. It traded raw power for something far more terrifying: speed. Scientists calculated this thing could hit 48 to 56 kilometers per hour, making it one of the fastest large theropods ever known. That speed came from an absolutely massive caudofemoralis muscle, estimated at 111 to 137 kilograms per leg, the largest of any theropod on record, and the speed came with a hilarious catch. Several of its tailbones interlocked so tightly that Carnotaurus could barely turn at full sprint. This was a straight line pursuit machine. If it locked onto you from behind in open ground, you were dead. But throw a sharp corner into the equation and suddenly this apex predator has the turning radius of a freight train. Its bite was equally strange. The jaw was built for fast snapping, not crushing. It could spike smaller prey with quick strikes, but the skull itself was reinforced enough to handle the stress of tugging on large carcasses, so it had a weak bite that somehow still worked on big prey. Brain scans of the skull cavity revealed a highly developed olfactory region, but comparatively underdeveloped hearing and vision. Carnotaurus smelled you long before it ever saw you, then closed the gap with pure speed. The horns? Probably used for head-to-head combat with rivals. The neck musculature was powerful enough to absorb two individuals colliding at 5.7 meters per second each. That's two angry meat-eating bulls ramming skulls at full force, and we know all of this from a single skeleton. Found in Argentina in 1984, it came with something almost unheard of for a theropod. Preserved skin impressions showing small, non-overlapping scales dotted with larger protective bumps along the sides. One specimen, one bizarre, horn-wearing, speed-obsessed, straight-line charging evolutionary experiment that somehow worked. But if Carnotaurus was a solo speed freak, the next predator took the opposite approach entirely, hunting in packs large enough to bring down the biggest animals that ever walked the earth. Mapusaurus. Imagine you're a paleontologist staring at a dig site in Argentina, and you've just pulled hundreds of bones out of the ground, all from the same species, all apex predators, at least 7 to 9 individuals ranging from young to fully grown, and zero herbivore remains anywhere near them. No other predator species mixed in, nothing that explains why this many giant carnivores ended up in the same place at the same time. That's exactly what happened between 1997 and 2001 at Cañadón del Gato in Patagonia, and it changed everything we thought we knew about how giant theropods lived. Mapusaurus, meaning earth lizard, was one of the largest carcharodontosaurids ever discovered. We're talking 10.2 to 12.6 meters long, weighing anywhere from 3 to 6 tons. A massive predator by any standard. But the animal itself isn't what makes this discovery so remarkable. It's the bone bed. Here's the thing. When you find multiple predators buried together, the default explanation is usually simple. Maybe they all gathered around a carcass, maybe they got stuck in a predator trap one by one. But the composition of this site doesn't support any of those explanations. There are multiple growth stages represented, meaning juveniles and adults buried together. There are almost no herbivore remains that would have attracted scavengers, and there are 0 other large predator species in the mix. The simplest explanation left standing is that these animals were already together when they died. They were a group, and that points towards something genuinely extraordinary: pack hunting in giant theropods. The prey available to Mapusaurus makes this hypothesis even more compelling. This dinosaur shared its Patagonian homeland with titanosaurs that weighed 60 to 100 tons. A single Mapusaurus, no matter how large, almost certainly could not bring down something that massive alone. But a coordinated group? That changes the math entirely. The leading hypothesis is that multiple individuals delivered sequential slicing bites, opening major blood vessels and accumulating wounds until even a giant sauropod collapsed from blood loss, and shock. And their anatomy was built for exactly this strategy. Like other Carcharodontosaurs, Mapusaurus had its jaw articulation positioned further back than Tyrannosaurs, which increased jaw muscle length and enabled faster jaw closure. Bite force decreased from the front to the back of the tooth row, and the lower jaw was constructed for slicing rather than crushing. This wasn't a predator designed to overpower prey instantly. It was a bleeding machine, a tool built to open wounds, retreat, and let the next member of the pack take its turn. Think of it less like a lion pride and more like a wolf pack running down an elk, except the elk weighs 80 tons and the wolves are each the size of a school bus. That bone bed in Argentina is one of the most significant large predator fossil sites ever found, and it suggests that the most dangerous version of Mapusaurus wasn't a single animal. It was all of them working together. But if a pack of Mapusaurus is terrifying, wait until you meet its close relative that ruled an entirely different continent, Carcharodontosaurus. In 1944, British bombers leveled a Munich museum and accidentally erased one of paleontology's most important dinosaurs from existence. The original Carcharodontosaurus fossils, discovered in Egypt back in 1914 and described by German paleontologist Ernst Stromer in 1931, were gone, reduced to ash and rubble. For decades after, this massive predator existed as little more than a footnote, a ghost in the fossil record that scientists knew had been enormous but couldn't properly study anymore. Then, in 1995, Paul Sereno changed everything. Fieldwork in Morocco's Kemkem beds uncovered new skull material, and suddenly Carcharodontosaurus was back from the dead, and what the new fossils revealed was terrifying. The name means shark-toothed reptile, and that's not poetic exaggeration. Carcharodontosaurus carried approximately 60 sharp, recurved, serrated teeth that bear a striking anatomical resemblance to great white shark teeth. Not vaguely similar, structurally comparable, these weren't built for crushing bone like a Tyrannosaur's thick conical teeth. They were biological meat slicers designed to shear through soft tissue, sever blood vessels, and slice tendons with surgical efficiency. A 2022 study confirmed exactly how this worked. The anterior bite force clocked in at 11,312 newtons, with the posterior reaching 25,449 newtons. For context, that's substantially weaker than Tyrannosaurus. But here's the thing, it didn't need a crushing bite. The triangular bite shape combined with those fine serrated edges meant the jaws functioned like scissors. Carcharodontosaurus didn't overpower its prey. It opened them up and let physics do the rest. And the animal behind those teeth was massive. The type species reached around 12 to 12.5 meters long and weighed between 5 and 7 metric tons. But fragmentary evidence from larger specimens suggests certain individuals may have approached 13.3 meters and over 15 tons. Those numbers placed Carcharodontosaurus right at the center of a decades-long argument about which theropod held the title of largest land predator. It was competing with Tyrannosaurus, Giganotosaurus, and Spinosaurus for that crown, and depending on which estimate you trust, it had a legitimate claim. But maybe the wildest part isn't the dinosaur itself, it's where it lived. Like, North Africa during the Cenomanian stage was a mangrove-dominated coastal environment, and roughly 70% of known fossils from the region are carnivores. 70%. That's an ecosystem absolutely overloaded with predators. Carcharodontosaurus shared this world with Spinosaurus, Deltadromeus, and others. Isotopic evidence shows they avoided tearing each other apart through niche partitioning. Spinosaurs ate fish. Carcharodontosaurus went after the big terrestrial herbivores. Different menus, same deadly neighborhood, but if Carcharodontosaurus was Africa's answer to the largest predator debate, South America had its own contender, one that might have been even bigger, like Giganotosaurus. In 1993, an amateur fossil collector named Ruben Carolini was walking through Patagonia when he stumbled onto something that would ignite a war in paleontology that still hasn't ended. What he found was the skeleton of Giganotosaurus carolinii, guy, the giant southern lizard, and it was almost 70% complete. That's an incredible find for any theropod. But here's the problem. The skull was scattered across roughly 10 square meters of ground, and that single detail has fueled 3 decades of arguments about how big this animal actually was. Let me explain. The holotype specimen puts Giganotosaurus at around 12 to 13 meters long, which already makes it one of the largest land predators ever discovered. But then a second larger specimen was found, a dentary bone that extrapolates to an animal roughly 13.2 meters long, and the weight estimates, they're all over the place. The holotype comes in around 6.5 tons using modern regression equations, but some researchers have pushed the largest possible individual to 13.8 tons. That's a spread wide enough to make the entire size debate basically unsolvable with current evidence, and the reason it matters is obvious. Giganotosaurus has been directly competing with Tyrannosaurus Rex for the title of largest land predator for decades, and nobody can definitively settle it. The skull is where things get really interesting. Estimates for the holotype skull range from 1.53 to 1.80 meters long. The larger specimen, potentially 1.95 meters. If accurate, that would make it the longest skull of any theropod ever. But longer doesn't mean stronger. The bite force was considerably weaker than Tyrannosaurus, and it decreased progressively from the front teeth to the back of the jaw. That's because Giganotosaurus wasn't built to crush. It was built to slice. Those flat serrated teeth worked like scissors, shearing through soft tissue, severing blood vessels and tendons. The lower jaws were adapted to capture and manipulate prey while delivering powerful slicing attacks, making Giganotosaurus a generalist predator capable of taking down a range of prey sizes, including juvenile sauropods, and it had plenty of targets. Giganotosaurus shared its environment with titanosaur sauropods like Andysaurus and Rebbachosaurids like Limasaurus and Nopsisus spondylus, massive herbivores that would have required serious predatory capability to bring down. Here's where it gets complicated. Its close relative Maposaurus was found in a bone bed containing 7 to 9 individuals, which is some of the strongest evidence we have for pack hunting in large theropods. The ecological pressures that made cooperative hunting advantageous for Maposaurus would have applied equally to Giganotosaurus, same region, same type of giant prey, same body plan, but no comparable bone bed has ever been found for Giganotosaurus. So we're left with a frustrating gap. The logic says it probably hunted in groups. The fossil record can't confirm it. That's the story of Giganotosaurus in a nutshell. Massive, deadly, and perpetually surrounded by unanswered questions. But if you think the size debate ends here, wait until we get to the animal it's been compared to for 30 years straight, Tyrannosaurus Rex. Every other predator on this list has an asterisk next to its name, estimated bite force, probable hunting behavior, likely pack dynamics. Tyrannosaurus Rex doesn't do asterisks. It has the fossil receipts to prove everything. The most complete specimen ever found, Sue, measured 12.3 to 12.8 meters long and weighed approximately 8.4 to 9.22 tons. That alone would make it the largest confirmed theropod, but Sue isn't even the biggest one. A specimen called Scotty, housed at the Royal Saskatchewan Museum, clocks in at 13 meters long and an estimated 8.87 tons. That's the largest individual Tyrannosaurus ever documented. And across the species, average adult mass ranges from 5.4 to 8.0 tons, which tells you something important. These animals had enormous variability. Some were tanks, some were absolute freight trains, but size isn't what made Tyrannosaurus the most dangerous predator on this list. The bite force did. Estimates reach up to 57,000 newtons, roughly 12,800 pounds of force. That's the most powerful confirmed bite of any terrestrial animal that has ever existed. This is what separated Tyrannosaurus from Carcharodontosaurs of similar or even larger size. Giganotosaurus, Carcharodontosaurus, they slashed and bled their prey out over time. Tyrannosaurus didn't wound prey, it destroyed bone, and the teeth were built to handle it. They were D-shaped in cross-section, a structural design that prevented them from snapping under the enormous stress of that 57,000 Newton force. The largest known teeth reached 30.5 centimeters, including the root, the longest teeth of any carnivorous dinosaur ever found. Here's where it gets gets genuinely surprising. Recent bone histology analyses suggest Tyrannosaurus took approximately 40 years to reach full size. Not 20, not 25, 40. It spent the majority of its life as a medium-sized predator, gaining roughly 600 kilograms per year during a rapid growth phase in his teens, then gradually leveling off. Juvenile tyrannosaurs occupied completely different ecological niches than adults. They weren't mini versions of the apex killer, they were competing with entirely different predators for entirely different food. And around age 11, something dramatic happened, or the teeth shifted from blade-like to fat and robust. Bite force began increasing exponentially. That single developmental transition effectively turned a competent medium predator into a bone-crushing apex killer. By full adulthood, the bite force exceeded that of any known theropod, including the much larger Giganotosaurus. Every other dinosaur on this list was dangerous from birth. Tyrannosaurus had to grow into its nightmare. The active-predator debate settled. A tyrannosaur tooth crown was found embedded in a hadrosaur tail vertebra, surrounded by healed bone growth. The prey survived the attack long enough for bone to grow around the tooth. That's not scavenging, that's hunting. And the tooth's location in the mid-caudal region of the tail is consistent with how modern pursuit predators like lions attack, targeting the hindquarters first to immobilize prey before finishing the kill. Every predator we've covered so far was terrifying in theory. Tyrannosaurus is terrifying in confirmed, documented, fossilized fact. But there's one dinosaur left on this list that might have been even larger, and its story is one of the most controversial in all of paleontology. In Spinosaurus, every dinosaur on this list is dangerous, but Spinosaurus is something else entirely. It's the one that breaks every rule paleontology thought it understood about predatory dinosaurs. And over a century after its discovery, scientists still can't agree on what it actually was. Let's start with the size, because the numbers are genuinely absurd. Spinosaurus potentially reached 14 to 18 meters in length. That's larger than Tyrannosaurus. The skull alone measured 1.75 meters, nearly 6 feet of narrow, crocodile-shaped head lined with approximately 64 straight conical teeth. Not serrated slashers like Giganotosaurus, not bone crushers like T-Rex. These were fish spears, teeth designed to impale and hold slippery prey, fundamentally different from every single animal we've covered so far. And the mass, nobody can agree. Conservative estimates place Spinosaurus around 7,400 kilograms. Earlier studies pushed that number to 20,000 kilograms. That's a gap of nearly 13 tons between the low and high end. The reason for that insane range comes down to one devastating fact. The original fossil was destroyed. If that sounds familiar, it should. Just like Carcharodontosaurus, Spinosaurus's original holotype was obliterated in April 1944 when Allied bombers struck the Munich museum housing both specimens. The same bombing raid, the same night, two of Africa's greatest predators reduced to ash. Spinosaurus spent nearly 7 decades as one of the most poorly understood large theropods on Earth until 2014, when paleontologist Nizar Ibrahim and colleagues described new material from Morocco and finally established a replacement specimen. What they found was unlike anything else in the fossil record. The skeleton showed dense, compact bone similar to penguins and manatees, animals that evolved specifically for aquatic life. The neural spines along the back could reach approximately 1.65 meters in length, over 5 feet tall, creating that iconic sail shape. For over a century, researchers have debated what the sail was for. Thermoregulation, fat storage, a water-filled hump. Current research leans toward social display or species recognition, but there's zero consensus. Then there's the tail. Extraordinarily flexible, with a wide range of sideways motion that looked nothing like a typical theropod. When researchers built a robotic version of the Spinosaurus tail and tested it in a water tank, it outperformed simulated tails of other dinosaurs and closely matched the performance of confirmed semi-aquatic swimmers like crocodiles, so it could swim. Case closed, right? Not even close. In 2021, paleontologists Thomas Holtz and David Hone published a direct direct challenge to the swimming hypothesis. They argued the evidence doesn't support full-on swimming or active underwater pursuit. Their proposal: Spinosaurus behaved more like a modern heron, wading in shallows and fishing from shore. Paul Sereno ran independent analyses and found that dense bones don't automatically mean an animal could swim. Hippos have dense bones and they walk on riverbeds. His skeletal analysis plotted Spinosaurus alongside long-necked semi-aquatic birds, not active swimmers. Here's where it gets complicated. Both sides have legitimate evidence, both sides have published in major journals, and neither side has delivered a knockout blow. The honest answer is that Spinosaurus remains genuinely unresolved. It is potentially the largest carnivorous dinosaur that ever lived, with a skull built for catching fish, bones built for water, a tail built for swimming, and a scientific community that still cannot agree on whether it could actually swim. After more than 100 years of study, the biggest predatory dinosaur we've ever found still refuses to be fully understood. And honestly, that might be the most fascinating thing about it. If you enjoyed this video and want to see dinosaurs' biggest myths explained, click the video on the screen now.